Hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, based on from where you have joined this session. My name is Mauli. I'm part of the Zoho team. Today, I'm very excited to present this session along with our guests. So, how digital signatures can reduce employee friction, increase customer experience in today's hybrid work world. So we have our guest today. The first one, James McCuvey, VP Research Director of Forrester, where he heads the Future of Work team along with his analysts. So James is someone with over 25 plus years of experience, where he understands and analyzes consumer behavior, employee behavior, and James is someone, a visionary, who has predicted the arrival of Amazon Echo before its arrival. And he also studies the online shopping pattern. So thank you, James. Thank you for joining the session today. Welcome to the session.
Thank you.
We have our next guest, Amanda, the CRM integration manager from Purolite and Ecolab company. So Amanda is also someone with over 20 plus years of experience. So at Purolite, she takes care of the Zoho implementation, customer onboarding, and the training of the employees for their new workflows and processes. Hi, Amanda. Welcome to the session.
Everyone, thanks for having me.
So, thank you, James and Amanda. So today, before we jump into the session, I just have to walk through the agenda again. So first, we will go through the latest trends in future of work, followed by how happy employees leads to happy customers, some best practices we will get to know from James and Amanda, and the role of digital signatures to enhance employee and customer experiences. So some housekeeping stuff first. So all attendee lines are muted by default. So we recommend each one of you to use the Q&A tab to post your questions, and we will have a Q&A towards the end. So the most popular question, yes, we will record this session and share the deck with you. If you have any questions or feedback about this session, please write to support@zohosign.com. It's all over to you, James. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, everyone. Again, from me as well, a welcome to this session. We have a lot of wonderful things that we've been planning to talk about with you, and I look forward to where the conversation will take us. I thought I would start at the beginning by sharing just a few slides to provide some context to what we are trying to talk about here today. So as I put up this slide, I really want to talk about this employee friction idea that Molly was introducing as part of the theme of our conversation. And I want to talk about how reducing employee friction unlocks customer success. So let's make this connection very clear between these two things. That on the one hand, someone might say, oh, I understand why you need to do things that make your employees like their job and feel good about their job. But at the same time, you have to just buckle down and do what's right for the business to serve your customers. And the connection that we want to make here, and I've got the evidence for, is that you do one to do the other. And so they both go together. So let's talk about that. I'll jump right in here. I want to first set the real context for this, because everything that you're doing right now to look at employee friction is happening in a context of what we call the 4 shocks of the future of work. And these are 4 shocks depicted here. I'll put up the labels so that you know what we mean by these pictures. These 4 things are the trends that, going back to late 2019, we said, what are the things that will shape the way companies succeed with their workforce in the next decade, meaning the 2020s. So 2019, which is that's a very important number to remember, because of course we were just months away from an example of the first shock in the top left, which is systemic risk. Systemic risk refers to those risks that are outside the span of control of the organization or even the industry, which obviously something like a pandemic was that kind of thing and has always been before. This pandemic was not the first risk event that we've experienced. Even in the last 20, 30 years, we've had several, although this one was bigger. But there are other systemic risks, climate risks. There are just simple natural disaster risks that can occur in a specific region, and how that affects that region's ability to provide supply or to channel demand to industries that are global. So systemic risk events have always been with us, will always be with us. But our ability to see them coming because of our global real-time news exposure is different now than it has been before. And so that's something that a company has to think about. How are our employees and our customers going to be affected by systemic risk events? Going around the circle here, robots and automation is something we've been writing about for over 10 years, of course, because for a long time people have said, oh no, robots are going to take people's jobs, a fear which actually goes back decades. But in particular right now, we're hearing from people talk about automation having a tremendous impact, especially generative AI, on the way people will work. Our own forecast, 85% of jobs by the end of this decade will have been significantly transformed by automation at a minimum, and in some cases robotics, depending on the role and depending on the industry. That's a shock you have to deal with, thinking about how will this affect our customers, how will it affect our employees, and how do we turn that challenge into an opportunity? Bottom left, employee data. Now, this is one of the lesser understood shocks, but we put it on our list of 4 because it's going to turn out to be very, very significant. Right now, we are all generating so much digital exhaust from our many logins that we have at work. And that employee data is a huge source of understanding for insight about what makes people successful at work and how we can have a workforce that is more optimized to reduce friction. If we use that employee data correctly, most companies do not use it correctly today. In fact, some of them use it directly incorrectly by using that data to only track and monitor employees and control them as opposed to enable and empower them. The fourth shock of these 4 is the employee power that we have seen rising over the last 15 years. And of course, in the last several years, it was very spotlighted by the pandemic as we saw frontline workers talk about how challenging their jobs were and rising up and asking for more respect, more pay in many cases, certainly more safety accommodations and so on. And that has been spilling over. And in the US, we're seeing a rise in the number of labor movement issues and strikes. We're seeing the same thing in the UK. We're seeing around the world this kind of employee power. But it's not the only kind of power that people are dealing with and expressing your feelings about your company. Is one way that also is affected. Okay, my slides are getting ahead of me just a little bit here. Apologies. It's telling me that I need to move on. So let's move on. I have pulled out, I'm talking about the present. Oh, what's happening in the present. And then I'm talking about the future. What's going to happen in the future? But sometimes it's helpful to look back, as we're doing in these 2 pictures, to see the past and to say, okay, when you look at these pictures, what do you see? And I've done this exercise with a few people, and sometimes they talk about the modes of dress, the ties, the dresses, the antiquated technology that people are using, or the way the desks are organized. I mean, these are all very, very noticeable things to comment on, either because they're similar to today or very, very different from today. But what you really, I hope, see when you look at every one of these environments and you think about, oh, they have that telephone or they have whatever they have, you see people. It is the people that the technologies don't make the business work. I mean, in one case, the entire room is women typing on old typewriters. And you think, oh, that business is about typewriters. No, the business is about the people. The typewriters can't type on themselves. It's the people who do it. And the same thing about the telephones and the desks and everything else happening in the other picture as well. It is the people. That is the thing that we want to optimize for in the context of these shocks that are happening in the future of work. How are we going to handle systemic risk? We're going to do it in a people-centered way. How are we going to manage employee data? We're going to do it in a people-centered way. How are we going to manage whatever else comes next as a challenge to our organization, specific to our industry or generally? It's the people who are going to get us through those things, innovating through those things, and then carrying us forward on the other side. That's why when we ask people in our surveys of nearly a dozen countries, thousands of people in nearly a dozen countries around the world, do you have what you need to be productive at work, specifically the tools, information, and technology to be productive at work? Only 48% of workers of all kinds in all types of industries, agree that they have what they need to be productive at work. This should actually be shocking. It should actually make you think, wait a minute, are you telling me that only half of people have what they need to be productive? Then we're doing something massively wrong in underinvesting in giving people what they need to be productive at work. while still expecting them to somehow magically be productive. Now, it's not like this is an on-off switch and people either have everything they need or they don't have everything they need. It's that people are telling us strongly, I agree that I have everything I need, or I kind of agree, or I'm neutral, or I disagree. And I've given you the people who agree all added up into this 48%. But the point is, every single lever along the way can be moved. You can increase the amount of information access that people have, the tools that they have, and the technology they have. But importantly, you can configure those things to be more likely to create success. And you can reduce the friction of using those tools. If you think about the number of tools that people have to log in to do their work on a daily basis or across a week or a month in their employment, it's astonishing the number of tools that people have to use. That itself is a type of friction, especially when every tool uses a different mode for logging in, a different user interface, has different conventions for it. That is itself a type of friction. But if you go into the journey of your employees for each one of those tools, each one of those solutions that you have acquired maybe from a vendor or you've built it yourself, and you think, okay, they have what they need to be successful. But if you go into the journey that they're going through in order to use those tools, you will, of course, find moments of friction. And it's really important because when people have these, not only tools, information, and technology, but it's given to them in a way that reduces the friction of being successful at work, they're nearly 2 times as likely to be engaged at work. We have a battery of questions we use to measure how engaged people are and what kind of engagement experience they're having. If they have the basic tools, they're more engaged. And engagement is good because more engaged employees do more for your organization. They're 34% more likely to say they're going to stay with you for the next 12 months. They're 42% more likely to thrive on the technology you give them, meaning that they'll agree to things like, yes, the technology that we have works like it's intended. Yes, we've been trained effectively in it. Yes, we can use it the way it was intended and it generates success for us. They're 58% more likely to be proud to work for your organization. I want to emphasize how important this one is. I've had a lot of companies who've come to us and said, our employee satisfaction survey isn't really telling us a lot of what we wish it would tell us. What do you ask people around the world that we might be able to borrow from that would help us know how we're doing? And sometimes they're able to incorporate, a dozen questions from the battery of questions that we use. And it's very, very useful for them, of course, because they can compare their results to ours. They can learn what's going on. But here's the thing, sometimes they can't change those questions. Sometimes they're locked into a set of questions, or changing them requires getting approval from a large bureaucracy that just doesn't really want to change much. And so they've said sometimes to me, what one question would you ask for us to summarize whether people are thriving here at work, whether they're engaged, whether they're willing to learn, whether they're willing to grow here and see the future for themselves here? It's this one. I am proud to work for my organization. Agree or disagree on a 5-point scale. The people who agree with that are more likely to agree with everything else that indicates that you're performing well, that their manager is a good manager, that the tools and technologies that they have are the right ones, that their culture at work is effective. So 58% more likely to say you're proud to work for the organization is a strong endorsement of the idea that when you reduce the friction to get the information that people need, to access the tools that they need, and to use the technologies that you've provided, you end up with a more engaged, more thoroughly connected organization. So that context is very, very important for us to start out with. And so I thank you for letting me have a couple of moments to start there. And let me start by just saying that from my perspective of talking to dozens of companies around the world on this, there's this moment where they sometimes say, okay, we believe you. This is so important. We absolutely need to improve the way our employees are experiencing their work. What big thing should we do to solve all of their problems and make them dramatically more successful and more proud to work where they do and all of that? And if you've got the energy and the clarity, the vision and the leadership to do some big transformation, definitely do it. Most companies are involved in some kind of transformation at all times anyway. So great, go right ahead. But if that means that we're not looking at the probably dozens of small ways that we can just reduce this piece of friction and that piece of friction, we're missing a really large opportunity. And that's why I was very excited when I was invited to participate in this conversation, because I love to talk about the big picture and I love to talk about the future. But if you can say to me, oh, here's this one simple trick. I know it sounds like an advertisement online, but try this one simple trick and you can reduce the friction of your workers. I've got all the evidence to show it increases engagement and increases everything else that matters. And today, I think we're in a position to talk about one simple trick, and that is the ability to execute agreements with a digital signature so that people can be more successful. And I guess I've had conversations with people where they say to me, oh, so you saved me 3 minutes because I don't have to print something out and sign it. Like, oh, no. This is a small thing that has a tremendous impact. So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce again Amanda Dolan-Riddle, CRM Integration Manager at Purolite, which is an Ecolab company. Amanda, welcome aboard. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So Amanda, I think there's some context that might be useful to share with the audience about your role. So if you'll tell us a little bit about what it is you do, and then a little bit also about the context in which your job has been changing. Because I mentioned, it's Purolite is now an Ecolab company, but that's a recent thing. So please tell us a little bit about what you're up to.
Sure. So my role, my official title is CRM Integration Manager, but primarily what I do is look for ways to streamline our business processes, make the engagement for our users a lot more streamlined. So I look for ways where I can identify processes that they do every day and how can we make that a little bit more smooth? How can we reduce the number of clicks they have to do to get to a certain screen? How can we say, okay, if I need to find this document, how can I make it easier and faster for them to find a specific document? So that's a lot of what I do. And being that we were recently acquired, we are in the process of kind of marrying our processes with the Ecolab processes. So we're finding ways where we take what they're using and incorporate them into our processes, or, in some cases we have to do the opposite. So it's been really exciting to see, it's like a puzzle sometimes to find out, ways that you can kind of streamline these things that people do every day. And I was thinking about something you said in your slides, and that it's the people. And I think some of it is, even the names that we use for our employees or our coworkers. And I always refer to them as my users. These are my users because I'm talking about software. But really, like, it kind of gives it almost like a disconnect. So it's like maybe I need to start like renaming them like team members or something like that. I kind of think that brings back the human aspect of it. So I really enjoyed those slides that you shared, James.
Oh, thanks. I heard something in what you just said, though, that I want to poke on for a little bit, because I think maybe you're using the word users, but it doesn't sound to me like you're thinking of them as just these abstract users, because you said reduce the number of clicks. I mean, that's music to my ears for seeing that you get it. You get that, I don't need to just deploy this solution and fix this process and add this application or whatever it is. Like, it really can come down to the number of clicks that have to happen in the work. Do you have a process for identifying those clicks that you might eliminate? How do you approach that?
There's a number of ways that we look at those. I mean, we take feedback from our sales force, when they're saying, this is just too much work. Well, a lot of times when they're saying that, it's because of something like that. It's because it takes them, they have to sign into 2 different apps, or they have to click through several different screens to get to what they need to get to. And as you mentioned before, I've been with Purolite a very long time, and previously I was a salesperson. I was on the road. I understand what it's like to have to go after a long day of visiting with customers, and now you have to go back and put your CRM data in and update things and execute agreements, and things like that. So we really do want to keep that in mind and make it as easy for them as possible if you want, your personnel, people, to comply and to do and to provide the data you need to run your business.
I actually didn't know that. I didn't know that about you, that you had been in the shoes of the people that you're designing for. That's kind of the ideal way to approach doing what you do, because you have the empathy, you know what it is that they're going through. Like you say, at the end of the day, if they're on the road, especially, I can imagine like finding the time to, I don't know, how long does it take to do that at the end of the day? Is that a 20-minute thing or a 2-hour thing?
Well, I mean, it depends on your calls. It depends on what you need to prepare, and if you need to prepare quotes, or if you need to prepare an NDA and execute that, those all take time. So if you can incorporate, like you said, something small, like an integration in your CRM that allows you to execute a digital signature from within CRM, and then you can have your agreement signed. That's really, kind of taking that process and making it a little more seamless. You don't have to export a document somewhere else, upload it, get it signed, then download it, then attach it to your record in CRM. It just makes it a lot more seamless.
Well, and you're getting at some of what I think is perhaps a misunderstanding that people have when they think about something as small as a digital signature. They think, oh, it's about executing the agreement. But I hear in there, like, finding the right file. I imagine that after you've done the downloading and grabbing and attaching and sending and whatever, you've got to then make sure that a month from now you can go back to the finalized terms. And which email was that? I mean, I've been in those shoes of like, which version of the email has the most recent agreement so that I remember for sure what we agreed on. So it's not even just the signature itself, it's the whole process around that can have more or less friction. And I can see how that would be really, really valuable. Maybe tell us a little bit about, well, at least one thing comes to mind. You can tell me if this is significant or not. I'm also sensing the possibility of reducing the human error. I don't know. I don't want to make human error like, oh, the people are such a source of error but let's be realistic. It's so hard to manage all of that stuff when you have to log into different things and do all of that. I mean, are we not only saving the time, but are we also ensuring the correct execution of the stuff, hopefully?
Well, I think anytime that you organize your process in a very streamlined way, which this does, and anytime where you can kind of pare down your process a bit, it allows you to your information and the tools and data that your employees need to access is much more organized. So the organization thing really helps me, and I know it helps our sales forces to be able to find what they need when they need it, instead of trying to sift through, sent emails. Trying to find things that were attached to an email is never a good way to organize your stuff. And I kind of I equate it to, if your desk is really messy, it really makes it hard to work. And so if your desk can be clear, concise, everything's in its place, you have a clean work surface, my anxiety goes down, and I know that I can just function better throughout the day. So I kind of equate it to something like that.
I'm laughing because I'm just not going to turn the camera down to see my desk. Conceptually, I'm with you. I understand what you're saying. But maybe I could learn if maybe I owe it to myself to clean things up a little bit after this conversation. But in there, you're getting at something that I think is really important to bring out. You were talking about just the effect on you of having that process and that organization of basically, like we describe it here at Forrester, as the emotional energy that it requires to do your work. Because of course it requires emotional energy to do our work. We're not trying to say that it doesn't. But when you think of it maybe as a bank that you deposit your emotional energy into, it's like I'm keeping myself physically fit and I'm getting sleep. And so I've got this reserve of emotional energy. And then I show up at work, but I only have so much. And where am I going to spend it? And, like you say, if you're looking at your desk and you don't know where everything is and it's just creating this anxiety for you, energy is going low. It's like a battery. and well, is it a battery? Is it a bank, James? I don't know. It's either one of those things, but it's being depleted. And for me, in the research that we're conducting, essentially what that means is you're creating, not you, but other people are creating internal systems that are basically requiring people to spend that energy. And then when it comes time to work with the customer, and this is that link that I want to make, and I'd love to hear more about your thoughts, that when it comes time to serve the customer, you don't have as much of that left. And that to me, that feels to me like how we link this idea that, hey, what we're doing to help it be easy for employees to succeed also yields benefits for the customer. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is anytime that you have to do a clunky process, it's more draining on you for sure. So anytime where, like I said, you have to log into different things, you have to download and upload and sign things and scan them. It's clunky and it drains you. And it also makes you not want to do it. Like, so people will be like procrastinating it more and oh, I'll wait to do that later. But if it's really smooth and you know it's going to take you 2 seconds, not only is it like you're not spending that extra energy, but you would then have that energy to go and service your customers a bit better. And in the process, your streamlined process is then also servicing your customer better. So your customers getting what they need from you faster, and then you can maybe move on and help another customer instead of, it taking you twice as long to just do one thing that you dread doing and kind of leaves you feeling like that's enough for the day. So I think that that efficiency is something that adds up. Like you said, it's a teeny little bit, but if you do it over and over throughout the day, it adds up.
It's interesting. Maybe I framed this wrong when I was talking about how it's just this tiny little thing, because it sounds like it's not a tiny little thing, I mean, especially in roles like the ones you're supporting. This is a very fundamental part of how they do their job and how they serve customers and how they feel good about their own ability to be successful. So I do appreciate you kind of sharing with us your process of how you identify where you can reduce friction, what that looks like in the lives of the people at your organization, and then this last bit about how it connects to serving customers better. I want to see if we can take these questions and discuss them with Molly as well. So if I can, I'm going to reintroduce Molly, who kicked us off in the beginning, product marketing manager at Zoho Sign. Molly, I'd love to hear from you as you're thinking about what you've heard Amanda say. How does this resonate with what you're seeing as your customers in, I don't know if it's different industries, but certainly different roles are experiencing, trying to reduce this kind of friction from their work lives?
So thank you, James. So majority of our users are from the HR, finance, and legal teams, where they have lots and lots of paperwork. So be it any industry, these are all the departments from which we see our users. Primarily from these departments, and then when they see value, they share this advantage to the other departments. Meaning they kind of share this technology with the other leaders in the other departments, thereby taking it across the organization. So similar to what Amanda said, we have seen an industrial piping solution from North America. So where they were using a different solution before, but when they were able to integrate the digital signature solution with their existing CRM, they were able to reduce the number of time to fetch a client information and to send out a document from 18 minutes to 10 minutes, meaning saving them 8 minutes and adding 3 more clients every single day. So serving 3 more clients is very essential for the organization bottom line and also for the department growth. So the number of clicks is one aspect, and the other aspect
I want to add though, Molly, because I think you're right. It's obviously important to the organization and the team, but it also just feels better as an employee to be able to serve more customers effectively. I mean, look what I did at work. I was successful. I solved people's problems. I helped them move forward in their objectives. I don't want to miss that important part. So go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No. Yeah, you are spot on. So for the salespeople, it makes them happy because they were able to close deals faster. It makes the organization management happy because it is giving them a boost in the bottom line. but for the end users, the consumers, it also makes them happy, right? So they don't need to wait on the long queue to get their work done. So which is exactly like happy employees is equal to happy customers. So we see this pattern with our users. Yes.
I like that. I like that, especially that at your level, what you're seeing, you're able to quantify it, because I think, what Amanda shared has been really, really great. Some very specific things about how this works out in her role. But I don't know that unless someone can go internally to a decision maker who holds the budget and say, like, look, 18 minutes to 10 minutes, was it? I mean, that's a significant shift. And so I think the invitation to people in the audience is to look at your processes and see where you could quantify the possible savings just in the process itself. But Molly, I'd love to hear more about, beyond, okay, so we've saved time in that process and all of the collateral benefits that come from that. But it feels to me like once you start down this path of reducing this specific friction, you're actually opening the door to reduce additional friction beyond that. Is that what you're seeing in the way companies are using this?
The major advantage when they start using an integrated solution across platform which speaks to each other is, so the collaboration becomes easier. You can collaborate with the various stakeholders to execute an agreement, and this data is spread across the company. You need to collate it and you need to automate it. So the first part is the collaboration aspect of it, and the second part is to make sure all the stakeholders are at one place and they finalize the agreement. And the next part is very crucial, where we need to verify only the correct person is signing the document, which is the ID verification part, which is very, very important in today's cross-border transactions and things like that. So we should be really sure whether this agreement is signed by the right person and whether it is legally valid. On top of it, we also need to make sure if we are also collecting payments, which is done parallelly in the earlier days. Now, this can also be part of the same workflow. So this is the new set of areas which is exploring in the agreement execution process that we see, James.
I like that, because every single one of those things, you make it easier to do something that needs to be done. You reduce the possibility for error in all of these things. And these are mission critical things internally, but also in terms of the customer getting what they need out of the way they're being served. So it just feels like this wrong to describe this as getting hooked on or getting addicted to reducing friction, but I kind of hope that it is like that more companies start to feel like, and I almost have that sense from Amanda, like she gets excited from like, oh, I've solved this problem and now I bet I could solve this one too. I don't know, Amanda, am I speaking for you? I'm sorry if I am.
Oh, no, that's kind of the way it is. And I think even from our users, we do get that kind of feedback. So once we make them happy about one thing, a lot of times they'll come and go, I have this idea. Maybe we could do this with that. And we get a lot of our process ideas like that from our users who have to execute them. Once they see what one thing can do, they'll have an idea of like, hey, could we add this button in the CRM? And, could we do this or that? And so they get that sensation as well. And I think it's because they're the ones that are feeling that payoff.
Exactly the same thing. So that is what I said, right? So first they introduce for the HR department, so the news spread across the company and the sales team will start asking for this button within the CRM. So it is a ripple effect. If someone sees the advantage or the benefits out of a system, and if they do knowledge sharing or casual chat with their co-workers, this goes like a ripple effect and people want more of it across the organization. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I mean, it's good to hear that people get in this habit, at least. If I won't call it an addiction, maybe that's just not a good, healthy word, but it's a habit of looking for these kinds of things. Because I can tell you from the employee experience side, every metric will go up when people feel it's not just that their jobs are now easier to do, which they are, and that they're more likely to be successful in their jobs, which they are, but they also have the feeling that their organization is invested in making them successful. That's a really hard thing to fake as an organization. knowing that there's an Amanda that you can go to and say, hey, what about this? And she'll dive into it, knowing that the organization cares enough to supply people in these roles who are ready to get your feedback and respond. That's kind of a culture change. So I don't know, Molly, if you see that from your role, because you're enabling and empowering specific teams and seeing them be successful, hopefully. Do you ever see any cultural implication of the organization maybe looking at itself differently because they're seeing the value of reducing friction in their day-to-day work?
I would say it is slowly picking up, James. I would not say it is already there. I would say 30 to 40% of the leaders appreciate the efficiency by going digital for their agreement execution process. But still, there is a huge room of improvement for the leaders to understand this fact and to adopt it across the board. Because when it comes to the IT budget, the IT security eats the major portion of it, and the rest of it goes to the other process to fix things up. So that is how we see with our current user base, James. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. Now, you mentioned before, I just want to pick up on this, the amount of detail that has to happen, especially when we get into cross-border transactions. I wonder if you could say more about that piece, because I imagine if you're, and Amanda, tell me, are you mostly doing work in the US, or do you have any cross-border transactions that you have to worry about?
We do, but currently that's kind of an internal process, and so most of our processes that we're using anything like this is domestic.
Okay. Because I imagine that solves a whole bunch of problems right there. So Molly, tell us a little bit more about companies that have to manage this across borders. Maybe the things that you're able to help them with, or maybe the challenges that they don't realize they're up against when they're trying to do this.
So I would say the a lot of digitization, maybe 50% of the digitization happened after this great pandemic, right? So people were working from remote locations and hybrid work became the norm. People started to hire people from anywhere at any time across the globe. So that is exactly when HR teams started to do or onboard users from different parts of the globe. And they want to be double sure if you are a company operating in USA and recruiting a developer in India or anywhere in the APAC region, your agreement should be legally valid across the nations. And you need to do ID check with the local database. Maybe in India, we have Aadhaar eSign. If you are going to recruit someone in Singapore, you need to have Sync Pass and things like that, right? So for remote work and hybrid work, so the world is very, it comes into our palm, right? So we need to know only this person is getting recruited to this company, and exactly where a digital signature application can come and help them in this whole process.
I imagine those rules change frequently. I mean, as new regulatory regimes come into play or new laws are passed in different countries, and so it's not like you just do it once and then you're done. You've got to be continually adapting to those things, right?
Yeah, especially in the European Union and also in other regions in the developed countries, they keep evolving the regulatory framework across the digital signatures. So if you take example for the European Union, they keep adding more and more regulation. They have 3 levels of digital signature: simple, advanced, and qualified. So for low value documents, they suggest a method. For high value transactions, they mandate qualified signatures. So likewise for other regions as well. So as a legal person in a company or the business leader in your company, you should be aware of whether your platform is compliant with all these growing regulations across the globe. And as a vendor, we should also be staying on the top with all these new trends and the compliances.
Oh, super. Well, thank you for that extra detail, because I know some people in our audience are coming from different countries, so I know they're going to have more of that need and appreciate that. Well, this has been a great conversation. I like the practical that we're talking about, as well as just at the concept level, to know that these practical things have these conceptual benefits. This is all very, very important. I know we're running out of time. We've got maybe 8 minutes or so left. We had some questions that I think we're looking at trying to answer in the time that we've got left. So Molly, maybe I'll turn it back to you to pull those up and we can talk those through.
Sure, James. We have selected the top 5 questions and we have put it out in our slides. So maybe I will start sharing my screen and we can take it forward from there. So here we go. So we have selected the top 5 questions from the Q&A tab. So the first one goes like this. So are the digital signatures and electronic signatures are the same? Okay, I will go ahead and take this
we
one.
didn't talk about that. So do definitely give us the answer on that so we're clear.
Yeah, every time in Twitter or in other social platform, a thread goes like this. Someone takes their phone and they take the scan of the document and they add a signature and they say, hey, you don't need an application and things like that. So the major difference is an e-signature is something you take your phone, you take a photo of your signature, add it to the document, but there is no proof that you are signing this document. If I have your signature, I can sign on behalf of you, which means electronic signatures are unsecure and weak. Digital signature is the next level where you use a certificate, do some encryption, and you use some PKI standards of encryption and decryption. So once the agreement is executed, there is no chance to alter the document. So electronic signatures are the basic level of e-signatures, which is less secure, and the digital signatures use encryption methods and it is more suitable for business documents. Yes, both are two different things, but one is a subset of another. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'm learning in there is that paper signatures aren't all that safe. Because you're comparing digital and electronic. It's like, yeah, one's clearly safer than the other. And then I think paper signatures haven't been all that safe. So this is probably smart no matter what. Okay, what is our next question?
The next one goes like this. So tell us more about the legality in various regions, US, EU, and other regions. Okay, so I will also go ahead with this one. So when it comes to e-signature, each country has its own law. The US has something called the eSign Act. Europe has IDES, and maybe India you take ITA, Information Technology Act. In the Australia and other region, it is Electronic Transaction Act. So each region has their own e-signature law, and they have the basic set of standards set up for business transaction. So it is highly recommended to all the business leaders and the legal departments to go through them before adopting any particular vendor for digital signature.
Okay. Good. Well, let's move on then. So our next question is
Examples on
yeah.
Correct. So
where
maybe
digital
James
signature smooth out the employee and customer experience.
Sure.
I mean, I feel like we heard some good ones from Amanda. I don't know, Amanda, did anything else come to mind that you're seeing, or did you really cover it? I feel like you did a good job.
I think I covered it pretty well, but I mean, just like I said, anytime that you can take a process that involves a document or really any kind of business process that you are, and you can kind of reduce the time it takes to do it, the time it takes to find the documents you need. I find that a lot of what we do, you know, and what we've done in the past, I should say, involved email too much. And so anywhere we can take something out of email and put it into a software where it's really designed to manage that has really improved the experience for both the employee and then again in terms of the customer, because they're getting the information they need back quicker, and they're, you know, they like that response time, especially in our industry. You know, we're one of the bigger players in a lot of our fields, and you know, if we can give them really personalized customer service from such a big company, that's really something that we pride ourselves on. And these kinds of things help us to do that.
And that's definitely going to boost the overall confidence in the relationship, right? And it's not just about executing that agreement. It's about knowing this is a partner that's doing things in such a way that they can turn this around quickly and effectively and in a way that inspires confidence. That's great. I think the next question is kind of related to it. Where do we start with digital signatures in terms of EX and CX? Because you were pointing out in that case, starting with looking for email processes that could be automated or reduced or removed. I think that's a good one. I think you had said earlier about getting feedback from your users or the people, Amanda, and I'm just curious, do you use any other formal or informal process to, I don't know, whether it's both getting input on what needs to be changed or input on things that you're proposing to change? I mean, do you roll things out fully formed and then get feedback, or do you test? What's your process for getting started on some of this?
Typically, we have a set of pilot users for any of our processes that we kind of want to roll out like this. And I always find that that feedback is great. I usually try to comprise that group of some that are, my super users that do everything I ask them to do, and then some that are usually more reluctant and need a little bit more help in those situations, because then I get a really nice mix of feedback from the group. That helps to identify any bugs, helps to identify any pain points that they're seeing that maybe I didn't anticipate. If they say, oh, this is really an awkward field, or I don't like what this is even the field name, it doesn't make sense. It's something as simple as that can really just cause them to struggle. So I think it's really important from an admin point of view that you take that feedback very seriously, because in your head, it might make perfect sense, but it doesn't really matter if the users are going to go, this is just a terrible process. So I think feedback from the users is really, really important when you're developing something new like this.
Thank you. Molly, what are you hearing about where people are starting specific with digital signatures to get this kind of thing rolling?
Mostly they start with the HR team, where there is a lot of onboarding documents and offboarding documents, and once that gets started, it gets passed on to the finance team, where they sign the invoices and receipts and things like that. So it is more of I would say, I would repeat the same thing. It's more of a ripple effect. So wherever there's a paperwork, the team starts using it first, and then they pass it on the advantage to the other teams within the company. And that's how we say, James. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good segue into the next question, really, because it's, if you're manager or a business owner and you're going to implement this, and maybe you'll implement it in HR, like you say, is there any best practices, but secrets that you would say, hey, you're going to save yourself a lot of trouble if you start here, or if you think about this, or what's the best way to get going?
So as far as we have seen with our customers, it goes like this. They go ahead and they don't import their entire documents into the system first. So they first try out face by face. They start with one department, import a few documents, convert them into a templates, and ensure everything goes well. They also configure backup. The signed copy should go to a secure backup, so things are safe for their internal auditing and external auditing purpose. So on top of it, and they also do some regulatory check with the legal team. So the signed copies and the signature involved are legally valid. So when you start implementing a digital signature solution, go slow. You start with one team, or maybe for a small fraction of the one team even, and then you start checking the legality of the document signed with that platform with your legal team, and then roll it out on a face by face manner for your entire company. So that is what we see and advise with our users.
Yeah, well, that makes sense, and it's good that people know that you've seen this happen enough that you can give them these kinds of tips and suggestions on where they can start and how they minimize their risk while also preparing themselves for the opportunity. Well, I know we're out of time here. I want to thank everyone in our audience for joining us today. I want to thank, obviously, Molly for hosting us here, and Amanda for just the amazing amount of detail that you've given people who are listening in and probably are taking notes, I hope, on how they can apply some of these processes to their own businesses. So thank you, Amanda.
Sure.
Thank you, James, and thank you, James and Amanda. So they don't need to take notes. We are recording the session, and of course, we are going to share the slides and the recording with them. So it was pleasure to have you both today on our platform. I think this session would be very, very useful for our users as well. And once again, thank you very much. We will connect again in another interesting and insightful session. Thank you, James. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. Bye.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.